All right, it's that time. Boston has entered the chat. What's up, everybody? He's Ountae Campbell coming to you from the PNC Bank studio at Nesson. I'm Natalie Noury calling in from the beautiful Polar Park here in Worcester, Massachusetts. But Ountae, I think this is the first time you and I have gotten to host anything together. I'm really excited for this. I hope you are too. How are things going?
They're going well. I'm excited to be on the show with you. Boston weather is hopefully a little bit worse than it is out there in Worcester because this morning when I walked out of the house, that gloomy weather was not agreeing with me.
Yeah, well, luckily here I'm not seeing, I'll knock on wood, but no tarps being pulled yet. So I hopefully skies stay clear. We'll have a good day for us in Worcester. But don't forget, you can call in. You can write into us. You can call the Boston Has Entered the Chat hotline at 617-790-0928 or email us at the chat nesson.com. And we have a lot to break down today. We're going to talk a lot of Patriots. Looking forward to this. Jerod Mayo has addressed the media today. A lot of questions still, but a couple things that we will be dissecting as they get ready for week one against Cincinnati. We'll also talk some fantasy football as George Balekji was joined with the host of NBC's Fantasy Football Happy Hour, Connor Rogers, and we'll speak some more trending headlines later as well. But right now, before we get there, we're going to welcome in Nesson.com writer Sean McGuire. He's here to join us. He's followed the Patriots closely all preseason. I think he'll be able to give us a nice look into what's going on. Well, Jerod Mayo will start this. He just addressed the media earlier today on Wednesday. He said, we do have a decision made on a starting quarterback, but he's not ready to announce that yet. He wants to talk to the players, to the team first. So why do you think he's taking that approach?
Yeah, I mean, I personally think, he says that he wants to talk to the team first. I think it's kind of a sly move when it comes to the media. Jerod talked to the media today, Wednesday. He's not scheduled to talk to them on Thursday, and then he's not scheduled to talk to them until Tuesday of next week. The Patriots are getting kind of a longer weekend. So I kind of feel like it has a little bit to do with that, kind of a veteran move from a first-year head coach sort of thing. But I think kind of reading between the lines and everything like that, you can still get some of what he's trying to say in a way. He had a quote that kind of hinted that Jacoby Brissett would be the starter. So I think that's kind of how it's going to go. So yeah, he's not going to speak to us until next week, and then I guess we'll see if the Patriots by any chance come out with a statement or a release or anything like that announcing the starting quarterback. But I kind of have a feeling it was, having a sly move.
Yeah, he said what's good for the team today may not be good for the team for the weeks down the line. Obviously, like you said, that's alluding to Jacoby. Mm-hmm. Do you think that's the right move for the Patriots right now?
Yeah, I definitely do. And I guess I'm kind of hoping that is the move. I've talked about with George about this a few times too, but Drake has made such progress and he showed so much development, since the start of training camp. Probably exceeded expectations. I think exceeded my expectations where we are now in late August. But I think that they can so quickly kind of turn that progress, not only halt it, but kind of just cause them to take a few steps back. And I think a lot of it comes down to the offensive line. So I think it's best if, they ride with Jacoby for a little bit. And I don't want to say bring him in week 4, bring him in week 5. I think it's more of a feel thing, when the Patriots feel like Drake is ready, when they feel like the offensive line, maybe most importantly, is ready in front of Drake. That's kind of go about it that way. But I just think there's just too many concerns with the offensive line. So you give Drake some time he gets to watch a veteran in Jacoby. He gets to kind of see defenses, real NFL defenses, not the cookie cutter preseason defenses that he was facing the last few weeks. He gets to watch those defenses on film when they were going against Jacoby. And then eventually he kind of enters into the mix sort of thing. But I'm leaning towards the fact that Jacoby will be the starter, and I'm definitely in the camp of Jacoby should be the starter.
Yeah, no, I think we all can kind of echo that sentiment as well. He has a lot more. When you talk about Jerod Mayo, what he said, the factors that go into this decision as well, he mentioned just the overall experience, the veteran status, what have you. You kind of just mentioned all that. But Jerod Mayo has also said that he values practice more than preseason games. And he said, and you said, May has outperformed Brissett. So in what areas specifically can you kind of dive into that you saw he outperformed him?
Yeah, I think he's just so much more comfortable. Like, you just watch him, and the first practice, he was very, I don't know, timid. But when it comes to like the processing and all that sort of thing, he's so far ahead of where he was. And then you see him in the preseason, and he did. He played better than Jacoby both the second and third preseason games. And he just brings so much more to the offense. His mobility, his athleticism. We saw it on his touchdown run, I believe, in the second game. He had a really nice run in the preseason finale. It was like a 3rd and 15 or something that he converted. So, I mean, that alone, like, he just brings so much more to the offense. And I think the offense kind of like elevates, when he's behind center. And I don't know, maybe it's like that rookie buzz or, 3rd overall pick sort of buzz. Whereas Jacoby, it's not exactly like that. But again, with all that being said, I do think Jacoby for the short term is a better option. But I think you see it in Drake in a lot of different ways, really.
I wanted to ask you about the Patriots' weapons. Obviously, the receivers have been big talk during this offseason as well. Mayo obviously commented in the presser that they were trying to carry 7 receivers, and that could possibly change. And then it did change shortly after with Jalen Reagor being cut. With Jalen gone, how does this affect this wide receiver group?
I don't think it affects them a ton. I mean, I guess I will say I was a little surprised to see Jalen Reagor be the one cut and not Kayshon Boutte. I thought that, I don't know, maybe with the special teams thing and a few different reasons, I thought that it made more sense to keep Jalen as opposed to Kayshon Boutte. But they still have 6 guys. It starts with Demario Douglas and Jalen Polk and Javon Baker and KJ Osborne and Tyquan Thornton. And now, Kayshon Boutte's still on the team. Kendrick Bourne is on PUP. Hopefully he'll be back somewhat soon, at least 4 weeks, but hopefully he'll be returning right after that. So I don't think that Jalen Reagor, not being on the team anymore is going to like severely impact the wide receiver room. I don't think he presented that much of an upside, I guess. I am interested to see how the special teams aspect works. He was such a kind of key contributor when it came to his, returning duties, I guess you could say. So now, does Marcus Jones get more of those? Does KJ Osborne get more opportunities to kind of return kicks and those sorts of things? I think that's maybe where you're going to see his impact the most, who's picking up for his role there. I don't think that he brought that much to the receiver room that all of a sudden it's like, oh my God. And it's kind of like that all over the Patriots roster. Like they lack such talent that it almost none of the moves that they made yesterday on Tuesday and today on Wednesday really came as that much of a surprise.
Well, I think another thing that's not much of a surprise right now is the offensive line is still kind of up in the air heading into week 1 of the season here. But week 3 of the preseason, Jerod Mayo thought that the offensive line and the things that happened were a little bit overblown. Do you agree with that? And do you have any kind of predictions as to what combination we might see on that line?
I don't agree with it. And it's kind of funny. I heard the same quote from Mayo today, and it was very similar to what Elliott Wolf said just a week ago, maybe, when he was talking about the Patriots against the Eagles, and how he was specifically talking about the preseason game and how the Patriots starting offensive line fared better. They were going up against Philly's backups. When the Eagles starters went up against the Patriots starters in the joint practice, the Patriots got demolished. It was embarrassing. And so kind of to hear Mayo say that today about the Commanders game, it's like the exact same thing. New England was going against Washington's backups. Like Jonathan Allen was not playing that preseason finale. So you're talking about your starting offensive line going up against backups, and I can't feel any sort of satisfaction when it comes to that. It doesn't sit well, I guess.
And I think the team wasn't satisfied as well. Obviously, they claimed 4 guys off of waivers today, 2 of them being offensive tackles. What do you think this means for this team?
Yeah, it's kind of where you're at, I guess. Jerod came out. He said that they think that they improved the depth, and maybe they did. But, these are players that weren't wanted by their other teams, and it's just kind of, that's the way the waiver wire works. Like, you're not going to get this starting caliber left tackle, this franchise left tackle at this point of the year. It doesn't happen like that. And the 2 offensive linemen they got, we'll see how it works, but it's not like they come in with these glowing reviews. I mean, I think combined they've played 3 games. I know Zachary Thomas has played 3 games in 2 years, and Demontre Jacobs hasn't played an NFL game. So we'll kind of see how they pan out. I mean, both young guys. Demontre Jacobs is 25, 6'6", 350 pounds. Played 3 seasons for South Florida. Went undrafted out of school. And then Zachary Thomas, 26 years old. He was a 6th-round pick in 2022, waived by Chicago. Then kind of caught on with the Rams, which is a team that just waived him, played 3 games over there. But 26% of offensive snaps last year. It's just, it's not and again, this is what you get when it's this point of the year. And it's, I don't think I would feel great. Like, I don't think these guys are going to kind of step into like these huge roles or anything like that. But it tells you where the Patriots are at, that they thought, these guys are better than what we have right now. And I also will say, like, it's interesting that Jerod wouldn't come out and kind of give the starting 5. I mean, some things have changed. Vidarian Lowe is hurt. City So got hurt in the preseason finale. So I know that those things have changed. But Jerod came out, I think it was like the first week of training camp, and said, like, yeah, we want to have this locked down going into the second game. And it's 2 weeks after that at this point, and there's just kind of question marks all over the place. So I don't think it spells great vibes for the Patriots offensive line. I think that's very it's easy to see. It's easy to see from the couch. It's easy to see from the press box. Any fan watching on TV, you can kind of tell that. So I don't feel great about the Patriots offensive line, I guess, simply put.
Well, we know that Cole Strange is injured right now, but something else that kind of interests me is Jerod Mayo said that, when he does return to health, there are possibilities that we could see him at center. We saw some fumble snaps in week 3 of the preseason. And he said that was kind of a possibility when we drafted Cole Strange, was his athleticism. He's a big guy, but he's athletic. Yeah. What do you think about that possibility? Do you think that could be a solution, or would that just create more question marks?
Yeah, I think it's good. I mean, he's not going to come in and replace David Andrews. So I think that's kind of, I think that there's a very good chance that David Andrews is, he's known now in New England, but I wouldn't say like he's as a recognizable face in the offense. In the NFL. And there's a very good chance he's the most important player for the Patriots this year. And it has some to do with David Andrews himself, really good at his job. It has a lot to do with how little they have behind him. So, with that being said, I guess it would be good to have Cole Strange kind of develop and play some center and all that sort of thing. But I think at this point, like, if David Andrews gets hurt, you're screwed. Like, no matter who is coming in behind him, you are so screwed. It's not even funny. So maybe, down the line, if Cole Strange kind of gets some reps at center this year, and then, Andrews retires or walks away or something next year, the year after that, yeah, that's good. But if you're without David Andrews, no matter who is behind him, you're like I said, you're screwed.
You obviously talked about who plays behind, takes some snaps from David Andrews, a guy that used to take some snaps from him. Bailey Zappi obviously got cut earlier this week, and he signed with the Chiefs practice squad. Is there any chance we could see him play in an NFL game ever again?
Well, first off, could you have picked a better situation? Could you have went from a worse situation to a better situation than I think what Bailey Zappi just went to? And he's probably the 3rd quarterback. I believe it's Carson Wentz right now. That's the backup for Patrick Mahomes. So he doesn't go in there as Patrick Mahomes' backup, but just to be in that room, to be in the room with Mahomes himself, with Andy Reid, obviously, just so many talented offensive guys there. I just can't imagine, how much of a difference it is going from this Patriots offense to the Chiefs. So, but to your question, could I see it? I guess maybe. I think crazier things have happened. I think there's a good chance, if he does learn behind Mahomes, maybe he reaches free agency and gets a backup job somewhere, becomes a second stringer somewhere. Maybe a team is interested in him with that. He does have NFL experience, not all of it great, obviously. But he does have experience. So, yeah, I don't think I would, bet my money on Bailey Zappi being an NFL starter in 4 years or 5 years like that. But could he catch on as a backup somewhere? Yeah, I think he could, and maybe he gets a few starting games in mid-December or something like that. But yeah, and I guess kind of kudos to Bailey Zappi. Like I feel so bad for him. Like, that preseason opener it was when he just saw so much time. It felt like he was a sacrificial lamb. Like Jerod Mayo came out. He said that he didn't want Drake Maye behind the second string offensive line. Well, he had no problem putting Bailey Zappi back there for 2.5 quarters. So, I mean, and that's kind of how it went all preseason. Saw less and less competitive snaps during training camp, was a fourth quarterback to enter both the second and third game for the Patriots. So good for him for getting out of here. He got booed by fans like brutally at times, probably not deserved. So now he goes on to Kansas City, and he's in a really great situation.
Definitely. I think we're all kind of happy for him in a way. And I even know Jerod Mayo has said, he's been the ultimate professional, in this organization. Yep. And I'll always root for a guy like Bailey Zappi. So we're rooting for him too. But Sean, you were great. So thank you so much for being on today. It was great to have your insight and to help us break down some top Patriots news lately. Yeah. But if you want to hear more about Sean's thoughts on the Patriots, then check out his conversation with George Balekji on the latest episode of Foxborough Rush, where they break down and dive deep into the Patriots' current 53-man roster. That's Foxborough Rush, available on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, wherever else you get your podcast. Don't be afraid to check that out. That's Sean McGuire again. And speaking of George Balekji, he caught up with one of the hosts of NBC's Fantasy Football Happy Hour. That's Connor Rogers, and they're going to help you get ready for the upcoming fantasy football season. So check it out.
He's Connor Rogers, host of the Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry. You could catch that Monday through Friday on NBC. That's what I've been going to get all my intel done leading up to my draft. We're going to talk fantasy football. Connor, you are the official first reoccurring guest on the Nesson podcast, man. The honor is all yours.
I appreciate that. That's a big honor that I hold with a lot of pride right now.
You guys know him from our convo talking about the Jets. He gave the great Drake Maye insight, knows his fantasy football as well. Connor, I want to get into it. Drafts are ramping up. These are the most crucial week and a half before the season kicks off next week. Out of the marquee guys that we've seen in the first round, we know the top 3 running backs, we know the top 4 or 5 receivers, however you want to break it down. Who out of those are the most sought? Who's your number 1 running back? Who's your number 1 receiver that if you're picking high enough, you can get after and take?
I think now that the extension is done, you have to go with CeeDee Lamb as the number 1 wide receiver. There was a while where when it was getting scary hours, it felt kind of public jabs back and forth. I could make the argument that Justin Jefferson's being undervalued, and you could take him as the first wide receiver off the board. Even with J.J. McCarthy down for the year, Kevin O'Connell's a good play caller. Sam Darnold is going to force feed Jefferson targets. But at the end of the day, I mean, George, we've seen it, right? With CeeDee Lamb in recent history. We know Dak Prescott is going to throw him the ball a ton. There's no number 2 wide receiver on this offense that you ever even think takes away that much volume. Brandon Cooks is the guy. It's really a Jake Ferguson kind of player. CeeDee Lamb, from a talent, from a target standpoint, everything is there for him to be an absolute monster. He would be my number 1 wide receiver I'm taking if you want to kick off your draft with wide receiver. At running back, it's such a weird way to describe this, but I mean, to be fair, nobody's ever repeated as the number 1 player in fantasy. I'm not taking Christian McCaffrey as the number 1 running back. I have a bad vibe with the injury already from summer, the injury history. I know he was great last year. If people take him number 1, I'm not going to argue and fight with you. I totally understand it. I would be taking Breece Hall, and it goes back to a little bit of the CeeDee Lamb conversation. The volume is just insane for Breece Hall, right? I mean, I understand they have Garrett Wilson through the air, but you can make an argument that Breece Hall most of the time could be the number 2 pass catcher in the Jets offense while getting, of course, workhorse running back volume behind a much improved offensive line with Aaron Rodgers under center. So now there's an easy argument to be made. Bijan Robinson can have that kind of leap with Atlanta. I love him. Obviously, McCaffrey is still good, but if I'm picking a running back first, it's Breece Hall. If I'm picking a wide receiver first, it's CeeDee Lamb, and then Justin Jefferson is a close second.
All right, so Justin Jefferson, the wide receiver 2, it's Sam Darnold at quarterback. I mean, we've seen the ability. Jaron Hall, all the guys he played with last year, still averaging 100 yards a game and putting up ridiculous numbers. What about the Jamar Chase situation? Does that scare you off? Because he's alluded to it with CeeDee Lamb. Got done, got his contract, that's over. But to me, Jamar Chase falls into that. Do I take Amon-Ra St. Brown over him? Do I take Justin Jefferson over him? What do you think with the contract situation with Jamar Chase and him holding in with the Bengals?
For me, the answer to your questions is both, right? I mean, right now, there's a lot to be nervous about with Chase. And I know, he's been a full participant in practice and everything like that, but even getting away with the fact they need to figure out the money, you have an interesting situation that T. Higgins is in a contract year and needs to get, some volume in this offense. You have a really not viable number two, but a great number two. You have the fact that Joe Burrow has been banged up a lot throughout his career. You have the fact that Chase has been hurt at times. I'm just in on the consistency and the floor of Amon-Ra St. Brown and Justin Jefferson over Jamar Chase. And I understand that might not be a popular take, but this is the old adage, right, George? You might not always win your league in the first round, but you can sure as hell lose your league in the first round. And I've done this before, right? You could take a guy that simply just gets hurt week 3, tears his ACL, and that's that. I mean, that's called bad luck. That's not a bad pick. But there are certain situations that there's just something lingering there that you don't feel good about it coming out of round 1. You want to feel good coming out. If you can't feel good at it coming out of your round 1 selection, that's a problem right there. Amon-Ra St. Brown, it makes you feel that way. Justin Jefferson makes you feel that way. Obviously, a lot of people feel that way even, with Tyreek Hill, what he's done, the top running back. So I love Jamar Chase. I think he's a great talent, but I think there are just lingering issues here from the summer that I'm not saying I'm not taking him in the first round because he should go in the first round, but there are easily, 7 players in fantasy that should go over him right now.
Yeah, that's where I sit at 4. Haven't drafted yet. I wish CeeDee Lamb waited today because I wanted him. But at that 4 spot, to me, it's Amon-Ra or it's Justin Jefferson over Jamar Chase. That's the way I look at it every time, I feel like.
Well, you know your league. Who do you think's going to be gone in the 3 picks in front of you in that scenario?
It will go CMC. I do think it'll be Tyreek and then CeeDee Lamb. I do think that'll be top 3. Maybe Bijan sneaks into that. So then I'll have the opportunity of Tyreek or Amon-Ra. Again, 4. I'm thinking Amon-Ra.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I would take Jefferson personally, but I don't it's a coin flip between the floor of him and Amon-Ra St. Brown. And I get the cold feet towards running back. Taking a running back round 1 it just always kind of feels funky because you're nervous about the injuries and the variance of it as well. So that's not we say it on Fantasy Football Happy Hour all the time this year. Actually, 4 is the number 1 spot we all wanted to be drafting because we think that it's the cutoff that you're going to get a player of the same caliber that was 1, 2, and 3. And then when you go beyond that, there's at least a chance, depending on who you play with, that the caliber, the tier could fall off a little bit. So if you're picking 3, 4, maybe even 5 this year, I think it's the best spot in the draft.
Yeah, I completely agree. Let the tough decisions be made in front of me. I'll take whatever elite receiver falls to me. But you mentioned it. It's weird to take those running backs in the round 1. What about the guys that turn around with the ADP in the top 24, let's say? So those top 2 rounds, if you're in a 10, 12-team league, standard scoring, let's go with that. Who are the guys you want to avoid that you think are getting drafted way too high, or the guys that are going in those spots that you're saying I'm staying away from?
Oh, it's an interesting one right now. I've seen Devon A. Chan go really, really high, and I understand he can win you weeks. I think that we're making an assumption that he'll always have enough volume and health to be that kind of guy, that kind of difference-making player for round 2. Now, beyond that, I understand taking the risk because he truly can win you weeks with his point-per-game basis. So he's somebody that I haven't been overly hot on. ETN gets volume, but I don't typically find myself with a lot of ETN shares as a whole. I really like Isaiah Pacheco. I think that he's a workhorse running back in a backfield that there's not really anywhere else the ball needs to go in a good offense, goal line opportunity. So I like Pacheco and Derrick Henry because I think the floor for them at running back is great. The guys with questions, we love Jahmyr Gibbs, but is David Montgomery going to steal a lot of goal line work? What is Saquon Barkley's volume in the Eagles offense? So that's how I've been navigating this, where if I come out of round 1 and I didn't get CMC, Breece Hall, or Bijan, and I guess if you're at the end of round 1, I could easily argue for Jonathan Taylor. I think Jonathan Taylor is going to have a monster season. My next targets are Derrick Henry and Isaiah Pacheco. I typically avoid Saquon, Gibbs, ETN, and Achane. And then when you get beyond that, it obviously gets a little dicier. But I think Raheem Mostert is a guy that's undervalued. I mean, the amount of touchdowns he had last year, he's still that guy. Mike McDaniel has brought him everywhere he goes. He's somebody I try to get later on. So the running back strategy is always the most interesting aspect of any draft.
Yeah, when to take them, when to wait, when to reach, and even bringing up a guy like Devon Achane, 5'8", 190, who knows he has the durability to stay in the NFL, and a guy like Jalen Wright, who you could get later in the draft, 205 plus, fast as hell, and the way he ran at Tennessee translates well to running out of the gun, what they like to do with the Dolphins. So let's get into that a little bit. Sleepers, who do you got? Late draft gems, who are guys that drafters and GMs, owners should be targeting?
Oh man, that's a really good one. I mean, listen, I've been waiting on quarterback, and it's not that they're sleepers, but just at cost guys that I think everything just feels off. It feels like Jordan Love has been severely undervalued. It feels like if you don't want to take a quarterback, like you want to let all your friends in a one quarterback league take him, get Jared Goff for free towards the end of the draft. Jared Goff, I think, plays 14, maybe 15 indoor games this year. 15 indoor games.
Yep.
All you have to do is Google Jared Goff indoor and Jared Goff outdoors. You have indoor Jared Goff for 15 games. I think you could wait on a quarterback, and then you could build your roster throughout, which is more talent in your flex spots when you have that opportunity to wait on a quarterback. So that's a big one to me. A guy that I loved, and now we kind of have to be patient because he sprained his ankle in camp. Tyrone Tracy will take over the Giants' backfield eventually. He was a guy that you can get at the end of drafts for free over and over again. If you want to go really, really deep with the sleepers, I think that Tucker Kraft can actually get more work than Luke Musgrave at Packers tight end. So these are guys like, once again, waiver wire candidates, free kind of guys. Speaking of the Packers, if I'm deciphering that wide receiver room, because they got 4 legit guys, I think Jaden Reed is the guy. He's the Packer receiver that I want to walk away with in every draft. I just think Reed is in for a monster year 2. I think there's such a comfort level with him and Jordan Love. So, yeah, I think when you look at it around that, it's weird. Everybody's catching up on ADP, and it's so hard to find a steal anymore because everybody consumes so much content and runs so many numbers that fantasy football players have gotten so smart, man. I'll say the last one, and this is starting to change. I think he's found his way into the top 30, but there was a while on Yahoo that he was going outside the top 40. Cooper Kupp. Puka Nacua has dealt with an injury all summer. Kupp has had a fantastic camp. Kupp is still a great player and Sean McVay's guy. And when you look at when they played together last year, Puka Nacua's targets went significantly down. So I'm not taking Cooper Kupp necessarily in the first 2 rounds, but if I get Cooper Kupp in the 3rd or 4th round, that at cost projection is just totally different and of value to me.
Connor, this is why you're the best. You went with, all right, who are the sleepers, but guys to target. And I agree with you. It's not just about sleepers. It's when you're going to get them. And if Cooper Kupp's staring me in the face, I want to take him. You also just reaffirm what I've been thinking of. I love Jordan Love in the 7th round and Jared Goff with all those indoor games. 1 open air the first 9 weeks, and then the end of their schedule too, all indoors and against good defenses. This is the stuff I learned from the Fantasy Football Happy Hour. But then I get mad because I know my friends are watching too. So I'm like, all right, I got to be really sneaky. I want to end with this. Any Puka Nacuas you can see of, I'm talking about a guy that's going late, but we could see have a big year in round 3, or just in general, I think a better way to put it is the drafts do's and don'ts you have as everyone's getting ready for their drafts.
You look at the wide receivers taken, I mean, it feels like it's going to be a little bit of a slow burn. Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, they're going really, really early. But then after that, it feels like it's going to be a little while. I think Jalen Polk is going to have his time the second half of the year. I had Polk as wide receiver 5 in last year's draft, so I'm really, really high on him. That would be the guy from this rookie class, but at the end of the day, he went top 40. So, it's weird to call him a Puka Nacua, right? When everybody seemed to love him. You want to go deeper than that. I wouldn't be shocked after the Jahan Dotson trade if Luke McCaffrey finds his way onto the field with the Commanders eventually with Jaden Daniels. And it's not going to be 1,400 yards, but is Luke McCaffrey a guy that's going to be a flex streaming option towards the back half of the season? Nothing would shock me with that one. But this rookie class is just very, very different. It's very quarterback heavy. It's star-studded at wide receiver at the top. The Brock Bowers injury is a killer to me because if he came into the season really healthy, it feels like he could be a dynamic rookie tight end in fantasy. But if I don't trust the offense, and now with the injury, you just get a bad feel around that. I'd rather spend big at tight end this year, get one of the top 5 guys. So I think after what Stroud and Puka did last year, we are so ridiculously spoiled. It's going to be hard to find kind of gems at both of those spots.
Yeah, I agree. And again, CJ Stroud, that's a guy you'd have to pay a 4th, 5th round price tag on him. Wait a little longer. There's the Dak Prescotts. There are the Jordan Loves. Or what you
Jordan
said, the Jared Goff.
Yeah, listen, I love CJ Stroud, but fantasy, the number one thing, you said the do's and don'ts. The don'ts is don't take players that the ADP is affected by name recognition, right? Like you're in a league and say 9 of your league mates are really sharp players and you're all in the same playing field, but say 3 of your players are more casual, more NFL fans than fantasy fans. They are going to draft, on an average, name recognition players like Puka Nacua and CJ Stroud higher than, I brought up Jaden Reed before. I mean, Packers fans love Jaden Reed. Diehard NFL fans know who he is, but your average NFL fan probably couldn't tell you Jaden Reed had almost 800 yards last year. So that's the big don't for me, is don't juice up the ADP of a name recognition player when fantasy is a numbers game, right? It's a purely numbers game. Go with what the numbers tell you. If at cost, 4 rounds later, I get Dak Prescott, who on a projection basis can be close or just as good as CJ Stroud, at cost, that is a 4-round savings. That is a name recognition or hype train kind of spot right there. So that's the weird balance of it all. You want to draft players you love to watch, but you also need to be very, very careful of that.
Yeah, and also on Jaden Reed, just watching him. Christian Watson, I don't trust his health. Romeo Dubs is good. But Jaden Reed, around the goal line especially, Matt LaFleur is one of the most creative offensive minds in the league. Shanahan, LaFleur, McVay, McDaniels, O'Connell, we know it, right? He knows how to get guys in the end zone. He knows how to get Jaden Reed the ball. He's not dumb. He plays smart. A guy like Jaden Reed, I love that as a gem too. Connor, man, I love talking fantasy. I love talking everything with you. Thanks for taking the time, brother. Congrats on everything. By the way, guys, listeners, viewers, Connor Rogers, newly married. Clap it up for him. And Connor Rogers, a new homeowner in the beautiful part just outside, north of the city in the beautiful state of New York. So congrats to all that, man, and appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks so much, George. It's always great to catch up with you, man. So I appreciate you having me on.
Always love talking to you. Thanks again, Connor.
All right, great stuff there from George Balekji and Connor Rogers. Now, Ountae, I'm not a huge fantasy football player myself, but are you? You dabble a little bit, right?
I do dabble. I was excited to listen to Connor because he had a lot of great insights. So I hope everybody was paying attention to that.
Yeah, now he brought up a couple of big names, which I think you can attest to, but CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson. I guess let's start with the wide receivers, running backs. Where do you think he was at with that? What do you take away from what he said?
His wide receiver number 1 was CD. I got to tell you, do you know what they say in Florida when you catch like a long touchdown?
I don't, but you're going to have to tell me.
The young kids are saying this thing called blur. And we're going to see a lot of that in Miami with Tyreek Hill. So he's my number 1 wide receiver that I think should come off the board. Mm-hmm. The NFL players rated him as the best player in the entire league, even over Patrick Mahomes, who we know is probably going to end up as the GOAT. Sorry, Tom Brady fans. My thing is I think speed kills. Mike McDaniel's schemes are going to get him open. He has a lot of fast guys next to him like Jalen Waddle. He's going to be probably the best guy in fantasy this year as a whole. I didn't have a problem with his running backs, but I do want to say this really quickly. I have a couple of sleeper guys that I want to get off my chest really quickly for you, Natalie, just in case you're thinking about playing, okay?
I'm learning from you, Ountae.
Right. I think one of the guys from Buffalo one of these 2 receivers, either Curtis Samuel or Khalil Secure. They're guys you can get super, super late. There's no Diggs. Allen's going to throw the ball a lot. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. You got to give him a receiver to go to. One of those 2 guys are going to be there. You can get them stupid late. So that's 2 of the guys you should look at. Zamir White obviously is going to have a terrible quarterback room with the Raiders. So the Raiders are going to do a lot of running the football. Last year, he operated as like a high RB2 guy. He's somewhere you can get in like the rounds like 6 to 7. You should probably know him as well. And then a guy that I'm a fan of, a team I'm a fan of at least, the Chargers, Josh Palmer. He's going to be over there with Justin Herbert. Justin doesn't have Keenan Allen anymore, doesn't have Mike Williams anymore. Austin Eckler's also out. So 3 receiving options that he has are gone. Josh Palmer has the rapport with Justin Herbert. He's probably going to be their wide receiver number 1, with Ladd McConkey being the wide receiver number 2. He's a guy you could get late as well with no risk. Why not?
A couple of quarterbacks he mentioned too. Jordan Love, undervalued. Jared Goff. It also has been said about Jordan Love, outside of Patrick Mahomes, I think it was Louis Riddick that said this. Outside of Patrick Mahomes, if you were to start a new franchise, what quarterback would you start with? They said Jordan Love, and he was a late draft gem, according to Connor Rogers. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I definitely do. Seeing him at QB 10, I went on my notes and looked at it, and I was like, yeah, he's right. QB 10 is where he's average at, and it's crazy. He's probably a guy who was operating as like a QB 5 last year, so it's kind of weird that we come into this new season and he's dropped so much. I know, obviously, Joe Burrow's climbed because he was out last year with injuries, and Herbert's climbed on people's list because he also missed some time with injuries last year. But him dropping 5 spots is kind of crazy, so if you can sneak and get him later in rounds, for sure, take him.
Awesome. Well, whether you want to listen to Ountae Campbell, Connor Rogers, George Balekji, don't forget you can call us at 617-790-0928 or email us at the chat at nesson.com. We would love to hear from you. But let's talk some trending headlines. First of all, we have David Ortiz and Drew Holiday, who were at the Raising Cane's Open in Boston. Let's take a look at some of that.
For next season, of course, the Celtics going to repeat, without a doubt. And gotta go for my boy right here.
All right. Well, Ountae, I know you're a big Celtics fan. I hope you know a lot about basketball. We do know that. A nice prediction there from David Ortiz. How do you feel about that one? Celtics to win again.
I feel like he's right. I got a bet with David Ortiz that he has spoken, and I am going to listen. I don't disagree at all. I mean, people are out here looking for reasons to say the Celtics aren't going to be the best team in the NBA again, and they're bringing up the Knicks because they got a couple of new guys in there. Milwaukee's healthier again this year, and they're going to be guys that are nervous about that. Maybe Anthony Edwards out west being better with the Minnesota Timberwolves, but all of that is noise. The Celtics are still the best team in the league. They'll have a healthy Kristaps Porzingis by the second half of the season, which means he'll be rested and ready to go and energized and all that other stuff to get them that shot in the arm in the second half of the season that champions need. And once we get to the playoffs, they're going to have a cakewalk probably again. Maybe the Knicks stay healthy and give them a little bit of a run. We'll see. But otherwise, yeah, this is the Celtics championship to lose.
And then he adds, he goes, my boy right here, Drew Holiday with the MVP. Do you agree with that part of it?
No, of course not. He knows that. Drew's an old guy. Yeah. Drew's an LA kid like myself, and I got a lot of love for Drew Holiday and the Holiday family. But yeah, Drew's not winning MVP of anything but being a great teammate, which is also great.
Yeah, we love Drew Holiday. Well, another thing, ESPN asked 103 NFL players questions about quarterbacks. The most underrated quarterbacks, Brock Purdy and Matthew Stafford. Let's start there. I mean, Brock Purdy, he's a young kid, but he's had a Super Bowl appearance, 17-4 record as a starter. I think he's definitely underrated. Matthew Stafford, second career Pro Bowl selection. He's just coming off of, once he left Detroit, it seems like he got a little more attention. But what do you think about that, those two being underrated?
Yeah, Cam Newton called Brock Purdy a game manager, and everyone ran with it last season. Yeah. And I think the guy who was Mr. Irrelevant beforehand and now obviously becoming a household name within every other season is definitely underrated. But I think this is a season where the 49ers could kind of get that kick off of him being kind of underrated. You know what I mean? Obviously, Tom Brady was a guy that people weren't paying attention to when he first got drafted as well. And then guys were like, oh, okay, he's all right. And then he became Tom Brady. And I'm not saying that Brock Purdy is Tom Brady because he's not, and he never will be, but he is definitely a top quarterback in this league. I don't know whether it'd be top 10, top 15. He's better than definitely the bottom half of the guys in the league. And so underrated for sure because he has weapons, but he definitely gets the job done.
And I agree with that. And I think they said the most overrated was Josh Allen. I don't agree with that. I think he's a great quarterback. He has to grow in a couple areas, but overall, I think Josh Allen has to be one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the league, in my opinion. I don't know what you think.
We have to say, is it Josh Allen or was it Stephon Diggs? We're going to find out this season. I am personally a fan of the Josh Allen overrated comments, to be honest with you. He's a big arm. He has a lot of great throws, and he makes a lot of great throws in the clutch. It's a great thing to be clutch, but he does also turn the ball over a ton. Over the last 3 years, there's no one even close to Josh Allen in terms of turnovers, and it's because he takes a lot of those big shots and they don't work out early in the game, somehow figures it out late in the game. I want a guy who's going to be consistent throughout the whole thing and win meaningful games throughout in the playoffs, which he hasn't been able to do so just yet.
That's where it matters most, Ountae. Well, it has been a pleasure talking with you, my friend. Thanks so much for joining me on this episode of Boston Has Entered the Chat. Don't be afraid to look us up and listen to us wherever you get your podcasts, whether it's YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, whatever else you use to listen to your podcasts. Tune in, and thank you so much for joining us on Boston Has Entered the Chat.
See ya.